This morning, congressional lawmakers are putting pressure on President Biden to respond after 3 U.S. service members were killed in Jordan. Iranian-backed militants in Iraq have claimed responsibility for the strike, which also injured more than 40 other soldiers. With me now is Senator Tim Kaine, a Democrat from Virginia who serves on the Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator Kaine, it's always great to speak to you. I'm going to start with a question right in your wheelhouse. What authority does the president have to respond to this drone attack in Jordan without congressional approval?
John, a president always has the ability to act in self-defense, doesn't have to come to Congress to ask permission for that. And that definition of self-defense is somewhat broad. And so those who have attacked our troops, if he knows who they are and believes that they're going to do it again, the president can act to stop them. But beyond self-defense, it gets murky. There is no current congressional authorization allowing war against these Iranian-backed militia groups. There's no congressional authorization allowing war against Houthis in Yemen and in the Red Sea. And so a bipartisan group of colleagues and I wrote a letter to the president last week asking some strategic questions. Hey, what's the strategy here to de-escalate? But also the legal authorities questions. And I think we're going to be talking about those a good bit this week on the Hill.
So first question, what reaction, if the United States does identify the source of this drone strike, what U.S. response would you like to see?
Well, I think that the most natural and probably the most likely response is action directly against the groups responsible for the attack. And those are likely Iranian-backed militia groups in Syria, near the Jordanian base where these service members' lives were lost. Our hearts go out to them. These are 3 reservists from Georgia. As you know, reservists and Guards members get these assignments and they're pulled away from their jobs and pulled away from their families to go help defend our country, and we all need to keep their families in our prayers. But the most likely response would be directly against those who engaged in this drone attack. And the U.S. normally has pretty good intelligence about where these attacks are coming from. So the president is going to calculate it. The secretary said we will make sure that there's accountability, but at a time and place and manner of our choosing. You don't want to tip anybody's hand or predict what's going to happen, but I think that's the most likely response.
And after this initial response, which you would consider to be self-defense, you will continue your very constitutional yet somewhat quixotic battle to get congressional authorization for action or for military action in that region.
Absolutely, John. I have been consistent on this with presidents of both parties. I don't think we should be at a war unless it is debated and voted on by Congress. And that debate is what lets the American public see what's at stake and make their own decisions about whether it's worth it or not. I happen to believe that getting the U.S. involved in another war in the Middle East would be a very bad idea. I think if we would have learned anything from 2001 to 2021, it's that wars in the Middle East with the U.S. participation cause us a loss of blood and treasure without really gaining us anything, not even gaining us friends. We're usually not appreciated for what we do, and we usually don't alter the equation for the good. So, I have colleagues who are calling for the U.S. to engage in military action inside Iran against the Iranian government. If they feel that, they should put that on the floor and let's have a debate and vote about it. But we shouldn't stumble or slide our way into another war in the Middle East without congressional, robust debate and vote.
Donald Trump says, quote, this brazen attack on the U.S. is a horrific and tragic consequence of Joe Biden's weakness and surrender. What's your reaction to what Donald Trump said?
Donald Trump is blaming America first. Blame America first. If something bad happens around the world, well, okay, it's the U.S.'s fault. That's what some on the left say, or what some on the right say is it's Joe Biden's fault. And I've seen other Republicans follow him like lemmings in trying to blame this tragedy on America or on Joe Biden instead of expressing sympathy for the families. Not a word of sympathy comes out of Donald Trump's mouth. I think it's behavior that's abhorrent.
So today, in the House of Representatives, they're marking up the bill which could lead to the impeachment of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. If the House does vote to impeach him, there would be a Senate trial. How will you vote in a Senate trial?
Well, if I'm a juror, I'm going to listen to the evidence, but I'll tell you what the House has put on the table is laughable. I think this is the Speaker's attempt to throw a sop to a right-wing faction within his caucus. They know it's going nowhere. You know, at the very moment that they're doing this, we're engaged in a really important bipartisan discussion about border reform. And who do the Republicans in the Senate insist be at the table to have the discussion? Secretary Ali Mayorkas, because they understand that he knows this issue backward and forward. And when he says, here's a reform that can work, they believe him. So at the very moment that he's doing his job and trying to help us forge a bipartisan compromise that's eluded us since 1986, the House is doing this stunt. It's going nowhere, and they know it.
Senator Tim Kaine from Virginia, great to see you. Thank you so much for coming on.